All right, once again for this meeting, we are to carry on, and proceed with our discussion. It's true that the principles that we do adopt while preparing a manuscript for publication are almost equal, similar to the principle that we do while writing our thesis and dissertation. However, there are some peculiar characteristics that can only be featured by a paper for publication, and there are some special characteristics that can only be seen in a thesis document. Remember, a thesis, this is a document which is written in forms of a book with chapters and whatever, and submitted for a university to acquire a particular degree. And it's within that particular thesis, you might have a title that is reflecting all the objectives that are within that particular document. And it's from the same thesis or dissertation, you can come up with different papers for publication. I remember a retro debate that was conducted a few days ago. It was regarding the idea that the same title somebody wrote on her thesis or dissertations could be the same title to appear in a paper for publication. The answer is typically no. And sometimes it might be yes, depending to the types of information you want to communicate to the public regarding your work. If you intend to communicate the entire works, all the objectives as it was on your thesis, the title could be the same. But in reality, a paper can even take just one objective, and then you decide to communicate that particular single objective as an independent study, and then communicate it to the public as a paper. You can sometimes take 2 or 3 of the objectives, merge them, and discuss it and communicate in forms of paper. And therefore, the title of the paper or a manuscript for publication will reflect the message that is to be taken by that particular paper. So today, I am going to discuss with you with typical examples. I'll be using one of my paper, which is here. This is one of my paper. I will be now using this as an example to explain some features and characteristics that are expected to be observed on a manuscript for publication. And before I go direct to this particular paper and explain those features, I would like to inform you what am I going to explain to you today. I remember the last class we did on the sections of what we call the abstracts, and I explained to you the component of the abstracts, what should be and how should the abstract be written in a formal way, and what kind of information we would expect to see in an abstract. So today we're going to discuss about the introduction, which is the abstract we go for introduction. So I'm going to explain what are the typical characteristics that an introduction should possess. And mind you, the introduction sections of an abstract the manuscripts for publication must contain 1 or 2 pages. That's typical enough, but should contain the relevant information that a reader should be expected to see. Now, let me highlight some important aspects, then I came back to these particular typical examples to discuss with us today. Now, there are some issues that we need to take into account. We needed to know some issues. At first, we needed to accept that writing a manuscript is like selling commodities, items, or other goods to the customers. And the customers, by this particular context, refers to the journal editors, the viewers, and the readers. So wherever you are planning to write a paper for publication, mind you that that particular paper you are writing should be so much convincing, attracting, and seducing the customers to accept it and find its relevance. And therefore, the title of that particular paper should be written in such a way that it will reflect some novelty ideas and should be attractive to the readers, as I said. You should not take as how it was on a dissertations or the thesis. That's why, under normal situations, when we are preparing our manuscripts, we are encouraged to write the title of that particular paper at the last stages of your activities. You prepare a document, follow all the stages. Then after you have completed to the conclusion, then you understand what is the exact message contained in that particular paper. And then you do with the so-called title of that particular paper at last. A paper can only take one objective of your entire document that you conducted a particular project or a research work, whether in form of thesis or citation. Sometimes, as I said, it may take you more than one objectives, depending on the magnitude and the deepness you are intending to communicate with the public. Sometimes you may demand to go to find out the relationship between the variables. And remember, everything is possible and it's easy only if you know how. And the skills of scientific writing is for everyone. There is no exception unless you do not practice. To be a good writer, all you need to do is to learn and then follow some simple rules. You need to be so logical, creative, and show some connectivity in your writings. You need to show what was the aims, what the significance of the topic, how others they have already spoken, written about that particular area of which you are trying to go through, what information are also missing, and what do you intended to communicate. Mind you, the structure of a manuscript, now we are looking for this, what we call the components of a manuscript. What are the main components of the manuscripts? So the structure of a manuscript normally tend to vary from one journal to another. And regardless of the variation that exists between journal to journal, there are common main parts or components that are to be understood. First, we have what we call in whatever a paper, when you are preparing a manuscript for publication, a paper that should be sent for a particular journal for publication, it should have a title, which could be associated with the author's address and affiliations. There must be an abstract, of which should have the summaries and associated with the keywords. I have already explained on all this the last class. And we have the so-called introductions, of which it tells us on why you did study about particular jobs. And then have materials and methods, simply called the methodological section, of which it could tell us what did you do. And then we have the results, which tell us what did you find. And we have the discussion, which tell us what does it mean. And sometimes we do merge the two to make a result and discussion, depending on the modalities and nature of a particular instructional format of the journal. Under some cases, you can find the sections of acknowledgements after the discussion, and then competition interest, and then we end up with listing references regarding the citations that we have made in the entire document. And we can sometimes attach some appendix to support the documents. As I said, each of these components has its own ways on approaching on how to write. This is the major concerns of my discussion. I remember we had already discussed about an abstract regarding how an abstract is written, what is within an abstract, what are the types and structures of this abstract, and what are the subcomponents that an abstract should have, and how does an abstract differ from conclusion. And I went further explaining to you the criteria that are used in selections of the so-called keywords. I said an abstract should be written within a single paragraph. But within that paragraph, it should comprise all the information regarding to some introduction, methods, results, the summary of the introduction, methods, results, the methodological use, the result obtained, then you come up with conclusion and a recommendation. And these are within a single paragraph of almost maybe 200 words, 100 words, 300 words. And sometimes it might be more than 300 words for extended ones, depending the nature and types of the information that you are intending to communicate. Today, we are going to discuss this section here, which is the not methodology, an introduction. The introduction sections of a manuscript, a paper for publication. What are the typical characteristics and what do we expect to see on an introduction? and in which sequence should be written so that they reflect some sort of a relevant paper conducing, reflecting, and attractive to a reader. I will go to demonstrate about this with an example, then you'll be observing the characteristics that I'm going to show you on an introduction. Some individuals do take it as a simple part, but very complex. And it's only the section that make the reader to accept that there is something potential in this particular paper, and therefore decided to go for it. It should be, an introduction should be comprehensive and reflective. It should reflect the research problems right from the beginning. On the first paragraphs, I advise you guys, on the first paragraphs, the problems that you are intending to communicate should be reflected on the first paragraphs. 2 to 3 sentences, the 5 to 6 sentences should reflect the problems that you are trying to communicate to the people. It should give the background of the particular information. It should point out what is known from what is not known. You should point out the contributions of the current of this work, of the current you are working now. What are the contributions you think they are new? We call them the novel ideas. And when possible, it should even show when, where, and how the problem stated. It should present how, whether other researchers have done on that particular related topics. And you should come up with some strong justification as to why the study is to be carried, and despite the other studies that you have undergone. As I said, there is the concept of highlighting problems, a statement of the problems right from the beginning. Here, I've decided to show you some few examples on how we highlight the problem, some researchable languages that are commonly used to present the problems. But point out the problem right from the beginning in the introduction sections, rather than storytelling. Use problem stating languages, such as available information is limited to. You mentioned those scholars that you had gone through during your literature review, that they have tried to indicate some findings related to your study, whether in the same study area, nearby study area, or the other places, but with retro related to that of your study. You cite, you mention them that available information is missing or is limited to 1, 2, 3, 4. And less is known on this and this and this. Or sometimes you can go for scarce information exists on this and this and this. Therefore, the current work aims to explore 1, 2, 3. Sometimes you can use this and this and this. You start mentioning your start point of interest is largely still unknown to whoever. Or the gaps in knowledge exist on this and this and this. Therefore, the current work aims to bridge the existing gap of knowledge. These are some of the language that you can tune while trying to figure out the problems in your work. Information pertaining to this one is lacking in literature. You need to justify. You give some references, justify that they are lacking of some of this information. That's why you need to go for that particular study. The recognition of 1, 2, 3 are ignored by authors. These are some of the languages of which I'm going to show you with typical examples right now. So with this, take you to what we call a paper here. This is one of the paper I want to share with you, indicating what should be observed in a manuscript. Let me make it large a little bit. This is good then. As I said, an introduction should simply contain at least 1 to 2 pages. You can see this is my introduction. It was only a single page. It has gone to the second page because I have decided to place this particular title and the affiliations of the author to here, so that you can be in position to follow and understand what are we trying to discuss all about. Otherwise, when I remove this, all the information about the introduction will be captured by a single page. But very complex, reflective, and contain all the information that an introduction should contain. And now, suppose this is my title, which is, I wanted to communicate one of my objectives, which was a floristic composition and the diversity of this understood plant species in the protected forest of Assam in northeast India. One of my objectives in my study was to make assessment of the diversity of this understory related plant species. When we speak of the understory related plant species, we are reflecting to these lower level grasses, forbs, sages, grasses, and other understory plant related species. And therefore, I decided to write a paper on this particular area. This paper was authored by me, the first author, G.K. Marumbuja, Professor Asharat Devi, and Dr. Crispinas Rubanza. This is from India. This is also from Tanzania. Then these are the addresses of the authors, and this is the corresponding author. Now, I told you an introduction should comprise of at least 5 sections. Within your introduction, a reader is expecting to find out 5 components. Very important. The first component is what was the idea about the paper. And it's from this idea about the paper is where the author is expecting to explain the general idea, concept about the idea behind, and what was the motives and the new concept that has brought him to make a study, that the statement of the problems. The second part of the introduction that should be reflected while preparing for your introduction section of your manuscripts is the significance of that particular idea. What is the significance of that particular point you are trying to communicate? First, you highlight the overall idea. What is the significance of that particular idea? And then you come up with the concept of how others they have spoken about this, how others they did in the concept related to yours. Then the first one is what information is missing. You have already discussed about how others they have done, and then from this how others you recognize the missing information. What is the missing information? Is there? And then what are you intended to bring about as a novelty or new ideas to the public? So if you comprise of all these 5 sections on your introduction, your paper or the introduction section will have to be fully equipped with this information. Now, how this look like? Now, let's try to go through simple ideas about the meaning of this. Now, if my study was to start about the floristic composition of this herbaceous species and understory plant species in these protected areas. Now, the intention was, I start with the first section now. What was the idea then? Protected and reserved forests are considered as the most active tools for protecting species from extinction due to impact of human-induced factors. Here I am trying to bring about the idea behind what the forest and whatever, and the protected forest. Numerous studies on reserved and protected forests have appreciated the role of forest in conserving plant species, ranging from understory layers to complex vernacular plants. This according to these guys. This acts as an important determinant of biodiversity and hotspots in any ecosystems. This is according to these people. Now, the understory vegetation is an important part of the ecosystem, which affects the physical and the chemical properties of soil, quality and quantity of forest, returns and water storage capacity in any ecosystem. You see, I am trying to show the linkage between the forests and its components in any ecosystems. And then I come up with the what we call now the understory related studies that they have already appreciated that they play a good role. However, the influence of this understory species composition to the entire forest ecosystem has been ignored. Now, from here, a reader can understand that, oh, this guy is intending to bring about a new idea that regardless the recognition of this understory plant-related species in any ecosystems, but still there are limited number of studies regarding the floristic diversity, composition, and how many they are within these forest-related ecosystems. This is a statement to show that there is a gap. That's why I said problems of your study should be reflected from very beginnings of your study. Therefore, documentation of the available understory species and its ecological significance, including primary productivity, carbon storage, nutrient circulation, litter dynamics, soil nutrients, and the phytochemical status of within a forest ecosystem are of great significance. The information about this could provide some relevant information and provide some proper ways for formulation of conservation strategies and proper policies. This paragraph number 1 is speaking about what the idea behind, within which you will find the problems. Then we go to the second paragraph, of which it will be trying to show the general significance now of these forests and the understory related species that are within the forest, by referring what others have made, what are the concepts. You can now pause the video and go through this particular part, and then you will find that, oh, this paragraph is trying to show about the significance of this particular concepts of my study in a particular study sites. Then after the significance, you go to the so-called how others have said about it. Here now, you are going to reflect the literature review in dialects, because we don't have the section of the literature review in a paper. But you have a ways on how you can reflect your literature reviews on these sections of the research gaps or the statement of the problem. Some journals, they sometimes make a special sections with this part because it's very useful. For instance, here, the available literature or the available information pertaining to the protected and reserved forest in the region where I'm working my study focuses more on floristic and analysis of high vesicular plants. So they focus on these big plants like trees, shrubs, and they ignore the understory related studies. And this is study, they focus on the concept of ethno-medicinal plants. They look, this according to these authors, almost 10 authors have tried to use the number to reduce some complication of now citations in between. They focus on tree species diversity, according to these authors. They focus on Physace species, climbers, and oak species diversity. They focus on hydrophilic studies and microphyte diversity. This is this paragraph explains about how others have gone through this particular area. And then you go for the what information is missing. Here, what we do, that however, the recognition and documentation of understory plant-related species, which plays a parameters and the important sustainability of an ecosystem, such as plant species diversity, productivity, soil nutrition dynamics, and other all related soil phytochemical status, are left behind in the body of knowledge. They are left behind in the body of knowledge. That is what is missing. That is a clear direction that this is what is the gap of your study. Despite of all these documents that you have gone through, you have found that they already describe on all other related parameters of the forest, and they ignore the conceptualizations of these understory related plant species and the role they play on the forest ecosystems. Then what are you intending to do? Now you go to that particular section. Therefore, this study, sometimes they use the current study, aim at minimizing the existing gap. How? By assessing, evaluating, and documenting the available understood plant-related species as the most key parameters for judging any ecological, forest ecological sustainability. Are you there? Now from here, the reader will be in the position of understanding what was the idea, what is known, what is not known, what is the new concept regarding that particular idea, and what was the research gaps, and what are you going to deliver, and what exactly information he is going to get from that particular paper. That is all about the introduction section of a manuscript, a paper for publication. If you understand this concept, writings of an introduction will not be a problem to you. Then, that's all. Let me share this way, this also. I remember I said from the beginning on these components. On the component of a manuscript, that a manuscript should have an abstract, of which we have already discussed. The title, how to formulate the title, we have already done. Introduction, that was our today's discussion. Later on, we'll come to discuss what should be observed on the material and method while writing a manuscript for publication. And remember, you should not be confused with these two things. Preparations of a manuscript for paper publication, it has some peculiar characteristics and mode of writing which could sometimes differ from the way we prepare information and introduction sections of a dissertation or a thesis, though they all fall under the same principles. But there are some sort of peculiarity that should be observed. With these simple remarks, I would like to say thank you for your time, and I ask you to follow my YouTube also, because there are some relevant information of which you can get more regarding the idea. Thank you for your class. Thank you for your time. Meet you next time where we will be discussing about the material and methods, or we may tune into another issue that may appear as difficult in our groups. Post anything in our groups, then we can share and we can discuss and we can decide which one to present in the next class. Thank you once again.